So thank you for everyone for joining us. I was a little worried we get snowed out, or a lot of people wouldn't be able to make it today. We're in a point in these workshops where we got to stay on. We're going to get onto a schedule and have deliverables. So that's. I'm glad so many people made it. We're recording today also, so we get to the people that aren't here. Let me send these around. It's double-sided. Take one. Let's see, before we get started, I think all of you know Bethany Javidi. Does everyone know Bethany? So Bethany's been a full-time technical writer for school engineering, helping on a lot of big proposals. I think really advancing our ability to do big proposals here. We're learning how to do this. I wanted to thank Bethany because she put together a lot of the material for the workshop. She's been really incredibly helpful in this. The other comment I make up front is sort of that we're doing suggestions here, guidelines. You shouldn't think about following what we're saying 100%. It's your creativity that's going to win career grants, so use your creativity. We're just making suggestions. Okay? So let's go ahead and get started. Let's talk about where we were. So the last two workshops were really focused on what is the philosophy of writing a career proposal and what are the fundamental requirements that are going to go into this thing. We're going to move from that. Hopefully you have a good sense of that. We gave you some material to go through to look at. Hopefully you've done that. We're going to go from that stage into preparing essentially what we're calling a white paper. So the next two workshops will break the white paper into two pieces. Bethany, if I'm saying anything wrong, just interrupt me and tell me I'm messing up. So that's where we're heading now, and that's why I said essentially we have to follow deliverables and stay on schedule because we're basically going to work on development of a white paper and then send that to a group of faculty to serve as panel reviewers. So obviously to get the panel reviewers something, it has to be a white paper for them to look at. All the stuff we're doing is on Husky CT. So if you go in there, you'll see workshop 1, 2, 3. I just posted stuff from this workshop during the snowstorm. So you'll see everything we're doing today is there. Some of the things we talked about from the last workshop, hopefully you're familiar with the solicitation, so you're acquainted with that. You should have a good sense of the division, NSF division that you want to go to. We gave you guides by these two authors, Pei and Hazelrig. These are good documents. They give you, hopefully you're reading those, these give you a lot of the philosophy of the career, how to write it. You know, it's been years for me since I've done this, and you see that this proposal actually has to have a lot of elements. It has to have a research project and intellectual or scientific merit. It has to have broader impacts. It has to have an educational plan. It has to have you doing the research, but also your career, how you see this research going into a career. So it's got to capture all these elements. I think hopefully you're getting a sense of that, and I think it comes out really well in these documents. So I encourage you to look at those again. Along the lines of what I said last, you're proposing a project, but this project is part of a career for you, right? And you have to convey that. I mean, the reviewers are people. When they read your proposal, they want this to read really well. It's almost like a novel. They want to be captivated by your proposal, right? So you want to give them a sense that they're investing in the right person's career. That's what you have to do here. And so you're proposing this project, whatever, 4 or 5 year project, but they're also investing in you as a person, that you are going to be the United States' greatest scientist in 10 years. You're going to get a Nobel Prize, etc. That's what they're looking for here, right? So you have to think about your project in the longer sense of your career. tie it into other things whenever they're available. When you're writing a proposal, use whatever you got to your advantage, you know? Play your aces, you have to do that. If your work ties into the academic plan, tell them that. It doesn't have to be a lengthy 10 paragraphs or a full page, but talk about it, right? Because again, they're investing in you. How do you invest in a person? The investment comes from different things. It comes from NSF, but it also comes from UConn. If UConn hired you as part of their academic plan and you're critical to UConn's success through the academic plan, that's another asset that you have to tell these reviewers. The other advantage is that, you know, the people that review this are faculty. They're at other universities, and academics read academic news. They're going to hear about, oh, did you hear UConn's doing this next generation Connecticut thing? Put that in there, remind them. You know, that's a plus, okay? Play all those cards. So if you can take advantage of any of this, you know, the academic plan is out there. It's very broad. You can easily, I think, anyone at this university can fit into that academic plan. Next Gen Connecticut, STEM disciplines. Take advantage of that, okay? Talk about the investment, even if it's 2 sentences. Take advantage of that, okay? Remember, they're investing in you, the university's investing in you, everybody's happy, it's a good investment. They don't want to invest resources to a faculty that's being at a university that's just going to treat them poorly, right? You want to, that's the idea here. Talk to your department about this also. You know, so when we do stuff, we start at the highest level, the state level, the university level, the school level, and the department level, and we say, what are our aces at each level? Do we have an ace to play at each one of those things? Some sort of statement, you know, what can I say about the department that's really positive in terms of my career path within the department? That's a good reason to talk with your department head. It's also, you're going to need a letter from your department head. The more the ideas come together early, the more organized your proposal is, and the better it reads, and it reads like a good story. Okay. I guess does this advance things? Okay. So like I said, we're changing gears. So our next goal is to develop a white paper. The idea is that this white paper will contain key proposal elements. We want to get the key proposal elements out quickly. Get your big ideas out, get them out of your head, get them onto paper, get them reviewed, get feedback, and get it back to you early so you can use that idea development and feedback to work on your proposal. Okay. So basically, as stated here, we'll look at the white paper content in a minute. We're setting up internal panels of your peers. So I've asked faculty from each department to serve on panels. We'll send the white papers to them, they'll read them, then they'll meet with their panel, discuss them. We'll give them specific criterion for evaluating them. We'll ask them to write their comments and get them back to you, and we're hoping to get that back to you in March. Okay, so you'll have good feedback by March. Today's workshop is the research concepts and some other odds and ends. And then the next workshop, we're going to focus on broader impacts and education plans. A lot of this is by example from proposals we have that are successful. If at any point you have ideas or anything, just interrupt me. So any comments on this, questions? Okay, so this is where we're heading. Let's see. I only have a few slides. Okay. Let's look at the white paper guidelines. So I sent this around. Did everyone get a copy of this? Okay. So white paper guidelines, the objective is pretty much as stated. To articulate your ideas and have your concept reviewed prior to investing the time and effort needed to write the complete proposal. Okay, so we want to get you some feedback on your ideas. The other thing I think about is making progress on this proposal. So if you've already laid this map out, it's essentially like a map. It's telling you where you're heading on this proposal. Then you can make progress a couple hours. You got a couple hours on a Friday afternoon. You can say, oh yeah, that's who I am. You can make some progress on this, continuous progress until this is due, as opposed to, you know, Friday afternoon you have 2 hours and you go, well, I'll start my career proposal. It's just like a huge jump, right? So this should give you a map and show you where you're going, which is good. Okay, so the objective is to do this, get panel review, etc. The content, we're shooting for 5 pages. This is a guideline, so if you don't want to follow it exactly, that's fine. You don't have to follow it at all. We put these in here because we thought these were the most critical items. Page 1, the project summary. What I'm going to say in a minute is that this project summary is pretty close to what you would put in the proposal, but well, I'll talk about that in a minute. So let's just go through these and see if there's any questions or comments. Project summary. Identify the directorate and program you are targeting. Okay? So hopefully you guys have a good sense of where you're going. Identify up to 5 organizations that you are either working with currently or would like to target for a collaborative relationship. This is, again, a suggestion. So my experience is when you engage collaborators that looks positive to me. I've reviewed a fair number of proposals, but generally I see engaging collaborators as a positive thing on a proposal if it's properly done, of course. Okay. If you do not have 5 organizations, you can leave it blank. I'd encourage you to leave it blank, and let the panel reviewer make suggestions to you. Okay, so that's the other thing. Yes, sir.
So is 5 the maximum number?
No. This is a suggestion. It's just a guideline. So we're trying to force you to do certain things that we think are good practice. You don't have to do these things. We're just recommending these things. You can exceed these things also.
So then the final submission, so it's like the number of supporting letter is
Bethany, what do you think on that? You've seen proposals with what?
There's been a range, and I can only speak to the ones that have been funded in the school, which are about a dozen that I've looked at, and they range from maybe 1 letter, the department letter, some have no supporting letters, and 5 is the maximum. So anywhere between 2, 3.
So it is a max.
Yeah, there's
Okay.
not, I don't think any of them had more than 5, but
But is that an NSF rule?
it's not an NSF.
Right,
That's
okay.
just what your peers have done and has been accepted by.
Yeah, I think you do not want to do a ridiculous number of letters, like, 20 letters would just look really crazy. So you've seen anywhere from 0 to 5 on careers. And again, don't do a letter unless it makes sense, unless it's going to reflect positively on what you're doing. I know, I work with a lot of faculty in the school, and so I'll talk to them and they'll say, I'm working on a proposal, and I'll say, oh, you should talk to this person, this person, this person. And I'll set up some communication, and then they build a collaboration, and it helps them. I think it's a good thing to bring collaborators in, and it's good to talk to people to see if they can help you identify them if you don't have them. You might say, I would really like to collaborate with such and such, but I don't have a contact there, right? So you say, I want to collaborate with some company, but I don't have a contact there. That's where me, people in the deanery, people in the departments, other faculty come in handy, okay? So use us that way. If you leave this blank, we'll ask the panels to recommend other collaborators for this proposal. We'll ask them that.
And,
Yeah.
Do they have to be domestic? Maybe
No.
international? No.
They have to be quality.
So including both the industry collaborators and the academic collaborators.
Yeah.
There have also been broader impacts collaborators,
Right.
like K-12 is schools who you work with, they can write a letter.
Right. So if you do an outreach activity with a high school, then getting a letter from the high school is obviously important. Right. Good, and like I said, we'll ask the panel if there's any collaborators that they recommend would strengthen the proposal, right? So we'll try to draw that out. The next three things are pretty standard. So we have an abstract, intellectual merit statement, and broader impact statement, which are basically required components of the project summary. So if you look at every project summary, they'll have these. They'll have the intellectual merit and the broader impacts. I think if you add up the words here, it's 500 words. You're probably going to fill a page, which is a typical summary. I'll talk about this more in a minute. Project description is, we're asking for 3 pages. So this is a very condensed version of your proposal, trying to draw out some big ideas for the panelists. So an introduction, you can read this. What problem are you addressing? What is your hypothesis, etc. A summary research statement of about 500 words. A summary plan for integrating research and education, approximately 300 words. The thing I was wondering, Bethany, do you think we ought to include the educational plan as several hundred words here? There's some, again, this is just a guideline. That was a question I had in looking at this.
I think there are various approaches, however people feel comfortable, but many of the proposals I've looked at do just have an integration plan. They don't
Okay.
have an education plan separate.
Okay,
Because the education plan is really supposed to be part of.
okay. So that's fine. Again, there's flexibility here. You don't have to follow this like a template. It's just guidelines for you. Don't stifle your creativity. At this first step, though, we're looking for brevity, short. In appendix, we asked for 5 relevant publications and 5 activities or accomplishment that establish your credibility as a researcher. So that's the 5th page. And then the other requirement we put in here is that we want you to show us 3 figures. So the first figure is a technical figure defining the research concept. The second figure is one illustrating your integration of research, education, and outreach. And the third is pretty standard. It's a timeline for your project targets for the next 5 years. So that's pretty standard that you would do that. We'll talk about figures again in a minute. So I'll amplify on some of these issues next. Are there comments on this? Does this look reasonable? I think we laid it out for 4 weeks, and then we put a 2-week buffer on. So I think we're shooting for completing this in 6 weeks. Okay. And again, to stay in the workshop groove, we have to produce this because in 6 weeks we're going to have panels set up to review these and get your feedback. So if you finish this in 8 weeks, it'll be too late. Okay, so any comments on this? So this was on the back of your handout, yes?
I had a quick question about the panel. So you mentioned that the panel's going to be comprised of people out of our department. Is there
Nah, actually the
Okay.
way we did it, because there's 16 people doing this workshop,
Okay.
and we thought about 4 panels of 4.
Okay.
Then we said, okay, the departments have to give us 1 person per person in this workshop.
Okay.
Because the numbers worked out well, plus with 16 people, there's a chance of schedule conflicts. So if we lose a couple people, we'll still have enough. So I think 16 is a large number of panel reviewers,
Okay.
but that allows us to have a scheduling challenge, which allows us to execute, and it was a nice round number. So that way it works out well.
Okay. I was more just curious so that we know how to target it. Because, I mean, if I'm submitting something that deals with environmental concepts, in theory, most of the panel at NSF is going to be at least somewhat environmentally related if I submit it to environmental
Yeah,
engineering.
no, you should be getting people
So-
that are, I think, pretty representative of what you get at
Okay.
NSF, but probably not as much of, I think you're going to get a pretty good
Okay,
It'll be pretty representative.
okay, so target it like we would target.
Target
a
it
national panel.
like you're going for the real thing. Good. This is on the back, but it's a schedule of our, how we're trying to go here. So today's the 28th. Our next workshop, I think, is scheduled for the 13th, February 13th. So this is 2 weeks and then another 2 weeks. And I think I added another 2 weeks just to wrap things up. So our target is to get the white papers done by March 15th. That's what I'm telling the department heads for panels. Here's the whole white paper that we just talked about. So the white paper has components dealing with the research, intellectual merit statement, things dealing with broader impacts. So we divided these into 2 sections. The first section is sort of the research, which we're working on first. So those we're asking you to complete in 2 weeks. Then we have our next workshop. We'll talk about broader impacts and educational plans. And then we'll ask you to do the second part in the next 2 weeks. And then I think we have 2 weeks slot at the end. So how's that sound? Good?
I'm kind of
Yes.
worried about the educational part. So the research is one thing.
Right.
We all know what we want to do.
Right.
The educational out and how we do the outreach, how do we get guidance from you?
I'm sorry.
How do-
We'll
how do
do that the next workshop.
So do you have time? You would do that on the February workshop?
Yeah.
And then we'll have time to
Yeah.
establish the contacts and everything?
I
That's
think
what
you
I'm-
basically, you don't have to actually establish the actual contact. So if you say, I'm going to work with a high school, you don't actually have to contact that high school.
Don't you?
By March
Yeah.
15th, but by the proposal, it'd probably be good to have contact.
Yeah, for the proposal you have to, which is July.
I think
Right.
we
Yes,
just
I
have
know. I'm talking about the proposal, not the white paper.
Right.
So you can have time to.
You just have to think of the ideas. And I would say, you want to do the white paper. If there's a portion of the white paper that you cannot do, you just leave it blank. And
That becomes an area where you can get help. And people
Right.
can come in and-
so we can say,
We want to get an idea of where you're going, and the part of this process is to identify gaps.
right, so we can say Marina's
Yeah.
needs help with the educational plan, then we can talk to you, right? I mean, and certainly during this time, you can come to us and say, I need help with the educational plan. You can do that at any point.
The
Go
whole
ahead.
idea is to get the thought process started early so that there's time between April 1st and July 20th to answer these questions, so that you're
Right.
not the 1st of July thinking, oh my God, what do I have to do to finish this? We want to have some time. So that's the reason behind the big reason behind this process.
So what we're gonna do for the next workshop is we're gonna bring all the existing programs that are within the school engineering for educational plans, which are commonly used in careers. And we'll give you a handout that has all of those on there. And we can go through each one of them and say, this is the GK-12, this is the Da Vinci program, and talk about those. And then we'll bring up a bunch of examples from career proposals of people that have used these, okay? We might see 1 or 2 of those flash by today. I'll try to point those out. But basically, we're trying to get all this material in front of you so you can say, you know, I want to do something with a high school, and I want to do outreach, I want to do it in a certain way. And you'll say, oh, okay, I'll use this program, and I'll talk to Ida or Kevin McLaughlin, and get that stuff out early. You don't have to contact the high school, but we want you to think about it early, have the ideas in your head early, so that you can write this proposal, not at the last minute, but have the ideas in place. Yes?
So conversely, if we have ideas that people we want to collaborate with, would you recommend talking to them now or waiting until we get the
You don't need
feedback from the
anything for the
panel?
white paper.
But would you recommend waiting until we have the feedback from the panel so that we aren't like talking to them and then saying, ah, never mind, decide to go a different way? Or, I don't, okay, I'm not explaining my question well.
You should talk to them. Probably.
Okay.
If you know that you want to talk to some people to work with
Yeah, I was more just
I
like.
think if you're pretty definite, you
Okay.
should talk to them as soon as possible.
Okay. Just
Um,
don't wait for the panel.
We're pretty far out still, but solidifying collaborations is something you don't want to wait until the last minute, particularly if you're dealing with industry. I mean, if you ever worked with like Pratt and Whitney, you know, to get a letter from them takes like 6 months. It's just crazy. I mean, because it's got to be read by all their lawyers and stuff. So I wouldn't, you know, this is secondary. This is just a tool to help you. If you can drive your proposal faster than these workshops, drive it. You know, get your collaborations in place, think about it. I wouldn't wait, you know, the reviewers might come back and say, that's a great idea, that's a great idea for a collaboration. Oh, how about these people? And they give you one other idea, but I wouldn't wait for the panel.
Okay.
Okay. Fortunately, this panel is just advisory. They don't have any capacity to approve or reject your proposal. So, good. So the comment I was going to make on the project summary, the white paper, the project summary we're asking you to do for the white paper is pretty close to the one you'll do for the proposal. And if you see people writing their career proposals, they're just tortured by their project summary. This one page is so important, and they just, you know. So I don't want you to be that way for this process. That's my point. So even though these are very close, they're not, don't think of it the same way. The project summary is a critical part of your proposal. People just read this and instantly form an opinion of your proposal, whether that's fair or not. The project summary is written and rewritten many times, okay? So for this process, think of the white paper project summary as just the first draft of your project summary. It's just getting your ideas out. It doesn't have to be beautifully written and perfect and optimized. Okay, I don't want you guys losing sleep over this this early. So the one you produce for the white paper is not going to be perfect. You're going to get feedback from the panel for your white paper one, and based on that, you can improve it, and then you can worry about it and lose sleep over it. Okay, but don't lose sleep over it now. To help you out, we've provided 15 project summaries for you on Husky CT. So if you go into, I think it's workshop 3, you'll see a document that says project summaries. There's 15 winners in there. And you'll see these documents. You can look at those to start working on the one you're doing for this white paper. But again, don't worry about making this perfect, okay? The important thing is to get your ideas out, okay? So other people can look at them and give you suggestions, okay? I'm not going to go through these today. I think after this workshop and the next one, you'll be pretty clear and you'll see these are all pretty standard, the formats. But take a look at those. Those are really helpful. Okay. Figures. So this was my picture for a figure is worth 1,000 words. That's all little words in there in case you can't read them. I can't see what they say. Figures, I think, are really important. What do you think, Bethany? I think they're critical. So I've reviewed a fair number of proposals. The first thing is I get really intimidated when I look at a proposal and there's no figures, it's just text. That just turns me off immediately. Okay, so remember your reviewer is going to have a big stack of these proposals to review, right? And when you review it, you're basically thinking about the person that wrote it. You may not know them, but they create an image in your head, right? And the figures are really critical for this. So the first thing is when I don't see any figures, it's just a negative thing. The second thing, when I see a figure, is that it makes me think that the person that wrote the proposal really knows what they're doing in a framework. They have a really good sense of how this project fits into the whole world, that they really have a grasp on the big picture. That's what I get. when I see these things. Of course, again, it has to be a good picture, okay? But that's what I sense. I see this and I say, this person grasped the big picture, okay? And that's important in a career. The other thing is it helps you write. So if you're trying to explain something and there's no picture, nothing to describe, then you got to write it all out in words. But if you have a picture and you say in figure 1, blah, 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 it helps you write. And actually what I found when I write proposals is I usually do the pictures first, at least in my head, or on just a piece of paper and scratch them out. My pictures are always done first because then I get to write less, which is good. So there's lots of reasons to do good pictures. Think of a great picture conceptually. If you can't draw it, give it to us. We'll draw it for you. We will. So we'll get Chris to help you or somebody else to help you draw pictures. That's how important it is. So don't say, well, I have this great idea for this picture, but I can't draw it, so I'm not going to put it in there. Or I drew it and it looks bad, so I'm not going to use it. Get help. It's worth it. Okay? So the rest of this workshop, we'll look at a bunch of pictures. So in the guidelines, we just made some suggestions of the most common types of pictures we see, but by all means, this is not all you should have. Again, your creativity is what's going to win this proposal. It's not these workshops. It's your creativity, your ideas. If you have ideas for pictures that aren't listed here, draw them and include them. What we typically see in these is a research concept picture. Okay, so we'll look at some samples of that. We also like to see an integration picture. Okay, so if you actually, it's amazing the impact to the reviewer of if you just have the words, I'm going to do this research, and then words describing how you're going to integrate this into an educational plan. That versus the same words, and then you put a picture beside that that shows an integration, the impact's incredible. I mean, it's just night and day in terms of how the reviewer perceives that. Again, that picture says, this person has put this into a framework. They've thought carefully about it, and therefore it's good. That's how I respond when I see pictures. So we asked you to do these 3, but by all means you would do probably more within a proposal. So what I was going to do is look at some samples. Before I do that, let's look at, because I have this in another PowerPoint. So let's see what we have to do for our next meeting. So discuss your career plans with your department head. I think it's good to let people know your research ideas. I mean, I constantly think about research ideas for the whole school. Every morning I get up, I read grants.gov, and I go, oh, I send it to somebody. I sent something to George Bolus this morning, and he said, I'm already working on this, thanks. You know, but I do this constantly. So the more people that know what you're doing, the more help you get, okay? Your department head's key to that. Your department head should be looking for opportunities for you. So, you know, you tell them you're writing a career proposal on this topic, and your department head's in the shower, relaxed, and an idea pops in his or her head. It's like, oh yeah, that's a great idea for that proposal. They should collaborate with this company. And then they come in and they tell you that. So the more you communicate that, the better. The other thing is, again, you want your department head to write a very pertinent, meaningful letter for this proposal. So you want them on board early, right? So you want to engage them early. If you wait till the last minute and you say, could you write this, and you let them write the letter, you might get something that's a paragraph long and not so great. If they're engaged, you can write more, you know, you could probably wind up, you'll write the letter. But you can put more context into that letter, right? How do you fit into the department? How does, you know, career-wise, what is your trajectory within the department, okay? So engage your department head. You might look at what's been funded in your NSF division and make sure that the things you're seeing there are the types of things you're proposing, that there's a good match. You should reach out to your NSF program manager. Remember, when you're dealing with agencies, that they cannot show any favoritism to an individual. So they will respond very carefully to your questions. You make it easier for them if you ask the right questions. Ranjan talked a little bit about this at the first workshop. So a typical phone call would be, you would call them and discuss your topic with them and ask them, is this topic responsive to the objective of your programs? Okay? Does this fit? They can answer that question. Okay? In answering that, you're hoping to pull out as much information out this as possible. Right? And this is a good habit, so you want to get in the habit of calling and talking to program managers in the long term. Any other comments on this? Yeah.
If there's a couple program directors for a particular call, how do you pick one? Do you call them all?
So for the same division,
Yeah,
I would say the more you talk to, the better.
okay.
And I've done this different ways. I mean, you have to be, some people are more responsive than others in terms of getting back to people. You know, I typically will email somebody and say, you know, I'm working on this and I have some questions. Can I give you a call at a time? I usually start that way. You can try just calling people and leaving phone messages. That works also. I would try to reach out to as many people as possible because then you get more opinions. Unless you know a lot about the division, so there might be 3 people and one of them is really the one running the show. So you want to talk to that person. I think the more information you can get from program managers, the better. NSF is, you know, a more generic agency in terms of they fund science. They're very much driven by the peer review process. But it's a good habit to talk to program managers. So when you go into a more mission-driven agency, you know, after you write this and you get this grant, then you're going to go after something from the Army or some mission-driven agency. Then being able to get on the phone and talk to the program manager is much more relevant because you can ask, they can answer things much more specifically about what they want. So I think it's just a good practice. I know, you know, when I first started, I had to call program managers. I was nervous, and then it's like the first time you go to class, you're nervous, and then after you teach for a semester, it's just routine. So I think it's good to do this generally for your career. Any other comments on that? Yeah.
I was looking for this, for the federal budget, like for the Department of Atmospheric Sciences and what has been out of the government, and how much money they will spend, or they will increase or decrease in several different disciplines.
Right. Was that just released?
It was released like a couple of weeks ago,
Okay.
but I get it from the University Associate, the UCAR, which is mostly targeted on
Right.
atmospheric sciences. So that might be helpful. I don't know. You know, if you know that in your
Yeah.
discipline you're gonna get like 20%, the
Thank
NSF
you.
will get 20% cut up in their budget. That will affect how all the program managers will, you know, distribute the money or so.
Particularly if you have director options.
So I can send you I'll send you the link to what I have.
That would be great. Thank
Okay.
you. So we'll see if we can dig up similar information. And obviously, if there's 2 divisions or programs that you look at that you could go into, and one has 3 times the budget as the other, then that would make your decision easier. Yeah.
Career awards, they come from another kind of fund, yeah, so
Yeah.
it's like $200 million just for career awards, so
Yeah.
I don't know how it is distributed between programs.
Okay, we'll see if, that's a great point. We'll see if we can dig up some information about that.
Well, I do know there are bar charts of how many each,
director.
Yeah, there is something.
And there's variation within, like, say, like CDAT, like in the different programs and
Yeah.
their priorities.
Good, okay. And then the last thing we said is we're going to start working on these white papers. So are there any comments on or questions about what I've done so far? Because the next thing I wanted to do is just start looking at some pictures. So this is the easy part. Help yourself to food. This is in another PowerPoint. So the first batch came from career proposals that have been funded. Oops. That's the same one. Okay. So these are posted on Husky CT, so you can look at them in more detail later. The other thing, so I posted the figures, I posted the project summaries. In terms of full proposals, again, faculty generally don't feel comfortable giving a full proposal away. A lot of faculty don't, some will, some won't. So we try to be respectful. So what we did was we listed all the faculty who have had successful career proposals, and we said you should contact them individually and ask them for a copy of the proposal. Okay. They're a lot more comfortable if one faculty asks to use their proposal, particularly if you're in the same department. Okay. So I'm hoping that we got enough resources out to you guys. On these, we basically contacted everyone. The project summaries are, you can get from NSF, so those are available. But courtesy-wise, we just said, oh, we're using your summaries. Let us know if you have a problem with that. On the pictures, we basically contacted everyone and said, can we use your pictures for the workshops? And they said, of course, we want to help our new faculty. So these are some different purposes. Sample broader impacts. We didn't ask you to do one of these. We asked you to do a research overview and an integration figure. We didn't ask you to do broader impacts. Broader impacts, of course, are your research in terms of how it impacts things significantly at a global level, national level, international level, state level, as high as you can reach. I'm not an expert in these areas, so I'm not going to do justice to these figures. Some of them I don't understand. You guys just scream out and talk about what you like or don't like, so don't consider me to be an expert. So this is from Jorge Elias's career. He does computational geometry. What he is showing here is the application of computational geometry to a bunch of different fields. So this particular subject to a bunch of different fields. The ones that I pulled out is this first one is a manufacturing example. Another one over here is computer-assisted surgery, right? So he's basically showing it. This work relevant to all these different disciplines. Okay, that's the broader impact of this thing. Should we rate them? Any discussion on these? They're all winners. This is from George Bolus. He's working in I believe he's working in the area of cleaner combustion. Is that correct?
yes.
Yes.
Yeah. So reduction of CO2 in the combustion process.
Yes.
This one's pretty easy to sell, the global impacts, right? So you just talk about climate change, and he's chosen to do this by showing the amount of green gas emissions from various sources, etc. So that one's pretty easy to do, global impacts. Or broader impacts. This one's pretty creative. This is Ali Gurkabak, electrical engineering. Works in a bunch of nano manufacturing processes. I don't know, what's he producing through nano manufacturing? Electronic devices. Is that gonna help me? No. So he's done a bunch of fabrication, manufacturing fabrication of electronic components. And what he chose to use was basically saying that these components are going into cell phones, and these are being used all over the developing world, not just in the United States and Europe and everywhere, but used extensively in the developing world to help solve a lot of problems in the developing world, which if you look this up, you'll see is true. The cell phones become a really significant device in the developing world. I think that's a really great broader impact. It's just really interesting. The other thing that people use a lot is to show students doing things, okay? So your broader impacts can basically be two things. It can basically be the impact to the world, but also the training of students, right? So those are the two ideas you integrate into your broader impacts. Yes?
The one on the right, I'd like to talk a bit about, because he can say all he wants in his narrative about participating in REU program, bringing in undergraduate students and becoming involved. If you can show a picture and give the names of the students, you don't have to talk about all that, because if he's showing his lab, he's showing two female students working in a computer science oriented discipline, which is really a rarity. So all he does is put up a picture, and he has the NSF REU student, so he's showing NSF, well, I'm working well already with one of your programs designed to increase participation in engineering.
Yes, thank you.
Picture says 1,000 words, and that one is, I think, really important. I mean, I think he carefully thought about which students he was going to show in this picture. Right.
So that's another point I was going to make. Thank you, Bethany. Here we're focusing on your career grant proposal, but I'm also thinking about your long term as a successful grant writer, proposal writer. Take pictures of things and use them in your proposal. Don't miss those opportunities. I can't tell you how many pictures I've taken deliberately knowing I was going to write a proposal to an agency, and that picture's in there. I mean,
yeah, and this looks like just a day in the lab. Nobody's posing for this picture, right? Or they don't appear to be posing.
Right. So always, when you have anything that you're standardly doing in proposals, don't just think of the research. You can always generate research stuff, but engagement of students. Document it now so you have it later for that proposal, right? So you'll very frequently see these. I can show you a proposal I wrote that was just full of student pictures. So many. It's like probably 10 of them, right? Because the agencies just love seeing students in these things. Okay.
So is next to us just include the REU students?
No, I would say whatever you have. Again, play your aces. You have aces, play them. If it's, an NSF REU one, but if it's not, if you don't have an REU, take a picture of just students in your lab.
Yeah, the idea here is
undergrads.
This photographs have a lot of suggestive capability here, right? You're suggesting, okay, I have an active lab. 2, I have female students who are really interested in what they're doing. 3, I'm working with NSF already. 4, I have a lab and I have an active student group. All of this is conveyed through this photograph.
Right.
And you don't have to go into a 100-word explanation of it. It's suggested by a carefully chosen image.
So you'll often read in a proposal that I'm going to recruit students from underrepresented groups. That's fine, but everybody says that. Distinguish yourself. Put a picture in there and show us, right? That picture just has such an impact because it's real. It says, they said it, but here's a picture that says they do it, right? So it's amazing the power of these pictures. It really is. So I don't want you to forget about those. Funding agencies love to see happy students working and doing great stuff. That's really critical.
Well, and it's real. It's
Yeah.
real. It's not made up.
Right.
So he included 29
Yeah,
pictures
Did you bring the stats?
Yeah, I have them.
Okay, so Bethany compiled stats on NSF career proposals and their content. Maybe we'll have time to pass those around today.
Well, it's on my,
Oh, it's on the, it is on the workshop too.
well, I can upload it, but
That's fine, I was just wondering because, you know,
that's on the high end.
sounds a lot.
So these are some samples of research overview figures. Okay, so this is Anson Ma's proposal, career proposal. I have no idea what he's doing. Nano or something. Yeah, so you can see here, this is figure 1. Okay, so that it's not uncommon to see this is figure 1. It's a definite, I like to think of them as a definition figure. It defines the research, defines my terminology, it helps my writing. So now I can write to this thing, right? Which makes my writing job a lot easier trying to explain stuff. I can just say, as shown in figure 1, this, and things are there. So you can see here he's included his central hypothesis here. He's defining a bunch of processes, which you'll see if you look in this proposal. As I'll show you in the next slide. So this appears first, and he's defining the main concepts of his proposal. He goes through and develops questions to be answered and the aims, specific aims of his research, and then he brings that all back onto this figure near the end of the research section. Okay. So you'll see that in the next picture. You know, you got to be careful. This one's pretty busy. It's a busy picture. You can get people to look at your pictures and say, that's too busy, it's too complicated, or you can say, that's great, right? One thing that's great about this, which you'll see in a lot of these, is referring to sections in the proposal where you define different things. This is my first aim, my second aim of the research, a third aim, etc. So you'll see a lot of people integrate these into their figures. So it corresponds directly to the material that's being presented in the proposal. Again, as a reviewer, I go, wow, this person's really got these ideas organized in their head. They've really figured out this chunk of research. That gives me confidence that they are going to spend this time well because they've planned it well, okay? That is the impact on the reviewer. And again, you know, if you can't draw this, you have it, draw a sketch it by hand. We can make it look pretty, okay? So tell us, okay? Any other comments on this? So anything emerging here in terms of ideas, I think you'll see this reference to things in the proposal in some of these figures. Project summary, he's sort of summarizing this whole thing. He's got a section called the project summary at the end of his research statement. After talking about all the questions, the aims, etc., he summarizes, this is the figure that goes with the project summary, and these are the research questions and proposed studies. Pulls everything together, right? Tells me this person's organized and is going to do a great job. They've really figured this out. This is from Kai Vila's career, which just got funded like a couple weeks ago, right? So this year we've had, what, 3 successful careers in hand. in the school. One highly likely and another possibility, so we have 3 in hand, it could go up to 5, which would be a great thing for the school. So this, again, is one figure which is sort of central. So he's showing microstructure. This is a materials problem. He's working with unique concrete materials. And in this picture, he's showing different things related to the research topics. So you can go see again the idea of, he talks about different aims of the research within the proposal. And you can see he's, identifying these specifically back onto this one figure. So aim 1, aim 2, aim 3, etc., showing things in conjunction with one figure. Okay? How that all pulls everything together, right? So that's a common theme you'll see here. Another example, so this, I don't think I had too much to discuss here. Again, you can see this is figure 1, so it's put up there and it becomes a defining thing that the text can refer to.
I just wanted to say that the computer science proposals seem to have a much harder time having relevant figures to put into them. This was one of the very few that actually had a figure. So those of you working in computer science, they're, at least the ones I've looked at that were funded, just generally don't have figures to the extent that the other
Look at
ones
this,
does.
that,
So your topic has to lend itself to having some kind of a graphical representation. And it's possible that you won't, so that shouldn't be completely discouraging.
Okay, these are integration of education and research. Again, you can put this in words. I think one picture really drives the point. This is a table. This again from George Bolas's. I think even just a table is good. And what did he do here? So he, in these, one of the aspects of the career is you talk about your short-term versus your long-term career goals, right? So it's that aspect. So he's divided this way, short-term goals, long-term. Here's the research activities he's talked about, and right underneath is the educational components tied to these research components. So the short-term and the long-term, okay? So just that one picture essentially shows these all integrated together. It gives you a sense of that these things are truly integrated, right? That just putting the words doesn't. Okay?
And also that you
That's a very simple one.
And also that you've answered the question that the solicitation poses. How are you going
Right.
to integrate? So this is an answer, okay?
Right. So the reviewers always review against a checklist. And if you make sure to hit what they're looking for on the checklist, you make their jobs easier, you make them happier, right? If they have to look for things, then you essentially lose merit with the reviewers if they have to spend a lot of time looking for stuff. This one, this is from Tyce Fan in mechanical. This is actually the research components up here. Then underneath, this is sort of a broader impacts of significance. This is a general statement of the education goals. So this is fairly general. Enhance engineering students' analytical competence in scaling reduced order modeling. So this is a general statement, and then these are the actual activities. Okay? You can see they're all pulled together into that one drawing. So taking those words, which you already know, putting some arrows between them that makes sense to the viewer, this nice thing, putting it all together implies integration, right? That just having them on 2 or 3 different pages of the proposal. So if, the research stuff is on page 5, and then the educational plan is on page 10, and the reviewer's got to go between them, you lose that integration. Yes?
Maybe I could ask this next time, but just to start thinking about it, how important in the education plan for this is it to have evaluation? of your outreach activities?
Um,
So I know I did a bridge proposal a couple of years ago, and one of the things I really got dinged on was not having an evaluation of the outreach activities in it.
I don't believe it's important in a career.
Okay.
So it's very specific to the different programs we're doing, what Bridge to a Doctorate, and that has a huge evaluation.
Well, no, I was
Emphasis,
talking
so
about the NSF's bridge program they don't have anymore, the
Yeah.
broadening research, whatever.
Yeah, I'm thinking in that is probably much more important.
Okay.
What I was going to say is you have to read it and sort of gauge that. You know, in a programmer, it's really important that you typically hire someone external to do the evaluation. I'm not even sure, is that something you see in the,
I didn't see it, but
yeah?
we'll have to see what the new solicitations is.
Yeah.
I would be surprised.
And you can see in here, this is, we can look at this as sort of a looking ahead type thing. Provide training for 2 graduate students and 5 undergraduate students. That's pretty standard. Participate UConn's Northeast Alliance Research Program for preparing minority undergraduates for advanced. That's pretty good. It's a good thing, right? So I think there, targeting the actual agency is good. So it gives that statement more clout, right? Developing a series of modeling courses, participate K-12 training, Da Vinci program, open house events, workshops, etc. So what we're going to do next time is give you a bunch of material that you can put in here of programs that already exist. So it doesn't create a lot of work. You don't have to create the program. Again, you can select things that you're passionate about. If you really want to do something with high schools and it doesn't exist, then do it. But generally, we can give you stuff to put in here that's already established. You tailor it a bit to your proposal. You make it sound nice and unique, but you work within an existing established program. That's usually enough to get this job done.
Just another comment about this figure is that he's basically set up his outline for the whole proposal. So he's raised expectations about what's going to come afterwards. I can imagine having sections dealing with each of those topics.
Right. So you can, I didn't notice that. This is a figure 1. This comes in early and it's setting the stage for the whole proposal. Everything's done in that picture, right? So the figures are really important. This is from Anson's. This is pretty heavy duty. This has a lot of stuff going on in it. Again, you know, you might say this one's overly complicated. It's up to you. So this is the integration, PI's research and education roadmap throughout and beyond the career award. So it's during the career and beyond. So he's capturing that long term. It's not just, you know, this 5-year project. It's my whole career. He's capturing impacts over here. He's got educational themes here. This is based on the work here. Again, you can see his aims in here, which are talked about in the proposal. These are educational themes. So here, if you look in here, nanomaterials, graduate student research training, REU. I'm not familiar with Bridge.
So that's the one I was talking about,
Right,
broadening
okay.
research,
Course.
initiation, grant, and engineering.
Right, courses and applied nano, targets graduate and undergrad. So he's talking about education here. These are some unique things. So I'd say these activities alone are pretty standard. So the reviewers might say, well, of course you're going to do those things. Those are what you're supposed to do. He dresses this up with some very nice stuff. He's got an ice cream project. So I think he engages undergrads in that project. The Da Vinci program, you see that again. So we've been running Da Vinci here for years. It's a well-established program. You integrate into that program. It's easy. You doing the Da Vinci people a favor, you're doing yourself a favor, you're doing NSF a favor, and all the participants. So we'll talk about these next time. Special course, Intro to Food Science and Engineering, lecture series on cooking. So he's brought in a very unique aspect of tying this research to cooking and engaging students through that process. Okay? And again, the purpose of this is integration of research and educational activities and outreach, and you can see it's all encapsulated in this picture. Okay? I'd have to go back and look. This is later on in the proposal. It's figure 12, so this is coming later. Let's see, so I can show you some other figures. These are not from careers. These are also on Husky CT. So you can look at these. These are from a bunch of other proposals. This was an NIH or NSF. This is by Raj in Computer Science NIH. So this is just a research concept proposal, bringing everything together. So this is tying hardware, software, testing, and results. Okay. Again, you can see the aims of the work integrated right into the proposal with other goodies. Here's another aim 1, 2, 3, 4. What other comments on this? Did you draw this, Bethany?
Yeah.
You drew this one? Oh, so we got the artist here. The artist talk about her picture.
Well, this is another computer science case where it's very hard to figure out how do I conceptualize this in a graphical way so people understand what's going on. And this arose from, I was trying to understand what the proposal was all about. So part of that thought process led to this figure.
I particularly like when I find components of the proposal right in this overall figure. I find that appealing. So it shows the work within this bigger context where it's also showing, you know, the end results of the work. I find that very appealing. This was a large center proposal. So I think this being the main concept of drawing, defining the main concept of the proposal, which was, what was this, core, shell, nano, something or other. What was that, Bethany? You worked on that one.
Well, I think you get the idea of what it's about for the questions.
Right.
The research.
So I mean, this picture became sort of an icon. We actually did a logo based on that picture that was placed all over. And then this particular drawing shows all the research questions that are being addressed. So overarching scientific questions for heterogeneous notice to be added with CSNS materials. Oh, there it is, core shell, nano.
So all these are successful proposals, right?
This one wasn't. It was very close, but it wasn't successful,
I mean,
unfortunately.
yeah, that was first.
Oh, this is one by Rich Christensen, a Dura proposal that just went in recently. Showing integration of systems. So this was an equipment proposal asking for this piece of equipment. So he's showing the overall context of where this piece of equipment is fitting into this big system. Okay, so that was nice of him to tell the reviewers. This was also a Dura. That's still pending, right? Yeah, so that went in with the other one. This one's nice. This went in from the Chase Center. And the Chase Center already has a lot of equipment. They're asking for another piece of equipment. So how do you make that argument? What they chose to do here was they showed all the existing equipment on this capability scale, so the sample size and the resolution. And you see, they already have this, they already have this, they already have this, and they're asking for this, and it shows us filling this gap. But then you turn the fact that you have a lot of equipment into an advantage because they say, we're investing in this place that's really good. They have a lot of equipment, they're doing a lot of good work, and they really need this. It's not just a redundant piece of equipment, it's filling this gap, right? Who did that drawing? Mark? This is from Tim Vada's proposal. Did you do this?
I know you do that.
You
That
do
was
that?
a revision that-
So is this a case of a revised proposal? Proposal with no figures, and then we added one and it got funded? We don't have enough evidence to say that was the case, but again, when I'm a reviewer and I see no figures, it's really difficult for me. This is a Resh's figure, successful RAU proposal. The artist is here. Did you draw this, or did someone help you draw the actual figure?
It took me 2 days actually.
To draw that?
I mean, it was the whole idea. And
Right.
After this, I could write the proposal.
So there we have it. So this is a new area of research, really interesting, dealing with individuals with ADHD and how they respond. No, I'm not doing this justice, because I haven't done justice to any of these pictures. How do those individuals respond to traditional engineering education, and how do we change engineering education to make it more attractive to individuals with ADHD? How'd I do? So I like this idea, the intersection of these areas. So in engineering education with gifted and intelligent, intersection, incremental technologies, divergent thinkers, intersection, creative problem solving. I didn't read your proposal, that's why I'm butchering this.
Actually, that's exactly it.
Bringing these individuals more into the mainstream and possible technological breakthroughs. Very nice. Anything I missed?
That's it.
So, okay, this was a large proposal on Murray, so this was very large. So the figure is sort of reflective of the scale of the proposal. This was the $7.5 million Murray that was funded, I don't know when, recently. But you can see on a larger thing, when you're putting a bunch of stuff together, lots of people, so lots of logos. Logos are always good if you have collaborators putting logos into your proposal. Again, you'll have to get permission to do that. You have to ask early. This has a bunch of different components. Again, you can see instead of aims, he's talking about tasks. So he talks about define specific tasks in this proposal. Task A, Task B1, Task B2, Task C. He shows all this stuff being integrated together. He's got his objectives here. Figure 1. Right? You define that, you get it up front, and then you can talk about it. It really helps the writing. Well, this is a proposal that a lot of people worked on. I worked on this one. It's still pending. So this is a large center proposal. I think, Bethany, you drew this picture. This is sort of the definition of the whole center, so we're capturing everything. Here's the team. So these are all the agencies we're working with. These are leveraged resources. So we put in there Next Gen Connecticut, we put Tech Park in. We talked about all the centers, existing centers that would feed into this new center. So we have them all listed here. We talked about our goals, we talked about our focus areas, and we talked about our outcomes. Okay? It sort of puts everything in that one picture, and it flows across from the team producing these outcomes through this process, right? And then this is pretty detailed, and then the next one shows like a breakdown more specifically of one of these areas. I think the first one, power and water systems. Here's our team, stakeholders, the people we're engaging. Here's the center at UConn that's going to be involved. Here's the sectors of DHS that would be impacted, the critical infrastructure sectors. Here's the themes identified in the call for proposals that we're addressing. Here's the specific projects and the outcomes, right? So we can pack it all together. and then it makes the text a lot more, you know, when I review proposals, I look at the figures and I go, yeah, okay, I understand that. And then I start just skipping the text. I mean, I don't read a lot of the text. I'm really just skimming through it quickly, right? So you have to make your impact somewhere. Pictures are a great way to do it. This was another large center type thing. Did Pete draw this one?
Yeah, that was a collaboration with Pete.
Yeah, so Pete draws very, Rex and
Pete,
Pratt,
really,
they
yeah,
draw
behind
really
these,
big pictures, or very intense pictures. But again, this is a large center activity, so you get these very complex pictures. Typically teams, here's the logos, a list of industry sponsors, outcomes from a planning phase, technical elements, these are the main technical elements, benefits, objectives, etc. This is the planning phase, so this was a two-stage process. You win, you get some money to do planning. I don't know what that was, 50, 100, couple 100,000 to do planning, and then you go into an implementation phase. This shows the whole thing together. So these are a little bit more complex. These are done for larger proposals. This was one picture within that same proposal, various activities. So industry coalition, university coalition, education branch, demonstration unit, different communications between the groups, etc. And then these are the outputs. So actually you see a lot of these drawing an output line or outcomes is a good thing. That's another common theme you see here. Any other comments on this one?
Just, these are just provided to give
Yeah.
you some ideas as to how certain things can be presented, and also the value of having a roadmap of some
Yeah.
sort for your proposal.
So like I said, when I start proposals, I actually think of the pictures first. And I sketch them out, and then that way it helps the writing. Your writing becomes so much clearer because you have something already there to write around. Okay. Good, so that's all I have today. Any comments or questions? So all this has been posted, and then we're shooting for, I think we scheduled our next workshop for February 13th. So that's a Friday. Oh,
That shows the,
stats?
yeah.
Oh, okay. Let's take a look at that real quick. This is posted, so you can grab this. Computer. Why is it so complicated? That's an old computer. So these are the statistical, or essentially, for all the career proposals that we looked through, it just says how much page length they spent on these different sections, how many figures, etc. So this is posted.
Hopefully if we can, the machine wakes up.
Right, it's ready. And some food?
Oh, no, I'm just trying to see if you're all set.
Come on in. So Chris, I told everyone here you'd help them with figures.
Sure.
So like I said, the next workshop will work on essentially activities you can use for broader impacts.
So basically what I did, I went through all the proposals and I looked up, and just because the previous several workshops, we had these questions, well, how long does this section have to be? What are, what should we do here? So it's just satisfy my own curiosity, and because I thought you're all quantitatively oriented people, you would probably appreciate this. So here we have, at the end, the number of letters. Some people, these are the external collaboration letters, okay? So anywhere from 1 to 7, and some having 0. Okay, and a number of your colleagues have internal collaboration letters, meaning, okay, I'm gonna work with this guy from another department. So they've got a letter from them, okay? And then here, this is an interesting column, number of figures. You'll see that Ally had 29.
That's the record.
Which is the record. Can you all read it, or it's too small? And then we had the CSE had 1, okay, and was funded. So you'll notice that the number of figures tend to be somewhat correlated with the subject matter. And then, okay, how many had a research overview figure? Most people did. How many had an education plan figure? Not many, but more had this kind of figure that synthesizes both. Okay, so just interesting. And also, how long does my education plan have to be? You'll look and see that the focus is definitely on the research plan. Okay. So it's clearly in the domain that you're almost comfortable, but there has to be something in there for education plan. Okay, helpful?
That's great.
Yeah.
So on the list that you have of all the people who've gotten it and what department they're from, do you happen to have which program they submitted to up there also? Like, did all of these people submit to the engineering directorate?
I would have to find out.
Because I've heard that some of these requirements with the education plan can be different if you go non-engineering. And I was just curious if all these people did
We'll
engineering.
have to find that out. I think probably, but I don't know.
We also know if this is the first attempt and they got funded, or is it second, third?
I
I
have
know
that.
that's a difficult
I have
question.
that, I actually do have that information, but
They
somewhere
don't.
else I'll have to get it for you. But many of them are second or even third submission.
That's what I want, I don't want
Yeah.
numbers tied to
Well,
persons.
I do have that somewhere, but most of them were not for submissions.
Or first times, second.
Okay. Any other questions?
Good, so I gave you guys some homework, is that all right? I
Yes,
think
sir.
having an internal panel review will be a good thing. So, and again, the white papers don't have to be perfect. If you're missing something right there, I don't know what to do. That's fine. Good.
Thanks.
Thank you. Yes, Bertie?
One last thing, I guess for